I just wanted a routine physical and instead ended up in the most humiliating medical circus of my life.
So here's the thing. I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm the opposite. I'll ignore a cough for weeks, wave off back pain, Google is it normal for your eye to twitch for 3 months straight, and convince myself I'm fine. But after I turned 30, something in my brain clicked. Be responsible, take care of yourself. Stop pretending WebMD is a substitute for an actual physician. So I made an appointment for a full physical. Blood work, the works. I was already nervous walking in. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and old magazines. A mom wrangled her screaming toddler while an older man hacked into a tissue. I sat there, filling out paperwork about my alcohol consumption and sexual activity while pretending not to sweat through my shirt. When the nurse finally called me back, I felt like I was headed to court. Height, weight, blood pressure, all fine. Then came the question I'd been dreading. So, anything else you'd like to discuss with the doctor? I hesitated. My brain screamed, lie, say no, get out alive. But the responsible adult part of me won. Yeah, I muttered. I've been having stomach issues. Stomach issues, she asked, pen poised. I mumbled something about cramps, bloating, occasional sharp pains, which was true. I just hadn't expected her to write it down like it was a legal deposition. By the time the doctor came in, cheerful and too chipper for a man about to rummage through my dignity, the note on my chart said, "Patient complains of digestive irregularities and possible abdominal pain," which is how I found myself 20 minutes later in the middle of the most mortifying medical ordeal of my life.
The nurse handed me a paper gown and said, with the casual cruelty of someone who has done this 1,000 times, "Open in the back." Then she left me alone with the crinkly paper sheet and my rising panic. If you've never tried to tie one of those gowns, imagine wrestling a kite that's also your dignity. I did the over-shoulder reach, missed the ribbon, tried the around-the-waist loop, succeeded only in strangling myself, and finally tied a knot so elaborate even a sailor would have saluted. It held for 3 seconds. Then, whip, open concept. I perched on the exam table, which is essentially a vinyl slip and slide with a butcher paper runner. My thighs suction cupped to the surface. Every micro movement produced a noise I can only describe as balloon being stepped on. Across from me, an anatomical poster labeled lower GI tract with an illustration that looked suspiciously judgmental. Dr. Sunshine, not his real name, but it fits, came in with a smile that suggested he had already had coffee and was not afraid to use it. We did the usual chat, family history, stress, diet. I tried to make jokes. He nodded politely and said the phrase no adult wants to hear. Let's take a look. First, vitals redux. Fine. Then, abdominal palpation. He warmed his hands, liar, and pressed in quadrants while telling me to breathe. On inhale 3, my stomach answered with a noise like a distant tuba. We both pretended not to notice. On inhale 4, it escalated to lonely whale song. He said, lots of activity, as if narrating a nature documentary. Any tenderness here, press, nope. Here, press, little, I flinched. He wrote something I absolutely wanted to read, but absolutely could not read. We got to the part where he said, we'll do some labs, in the breezy tone of someone not about to send me on a scavenger hunt for bodily fluids. He handed me a little plastic cup with a lid the size of a button and said, restroom is down the hall on your left, fill halfway. I stared at the cup like it personally offended me. In the restroom, I discovered the perverse physics of trying to aim under pressure while also holding a Dixie-sized container and not peeing on one's own knuckles while also keeping a paper gown from kiting open into the hallway. Halfway turned into Niagara audition. In my scramble to screw the toy-sized lid on, I cross-threaded it. A golden arc kissed my wrist and the counter. I emitted a sound known only to bats and shamed adults. Paper towels were deployed. Industrial soap was deployed. Dignity was not recovered. Back in the room, I handed the cup to the nurse with the grim solemnity of a battlefield medic. She took it with 2 fingers, the way you'd accept a cursed amulet, popped it into a bio bin and said, we'll do blood next. I'm not squeamish about needles, but there is something uniquely humbling about rolling up your sleeve while wearing an open-back gown that refuses to decide whether it's clothing or a suggestion. She tied the tourniquet, asked me to make a fist. I complied so hard my knuckles went white. You can relax, she said. I did. She didn't find the vein. Tap, tap. Huh. New spot. Tap. You're a little dehydrated.
Cool, I said, as if I'd chosen to be a raisin. Stick, miss, stick. Got it. A small vial filled like a wine glass in reverse, then 2 more, because apparently my bloodline is funding a research project. Halfway through vial 3, the room did that slow tilt thing. Sweaty, ears ringing. I said, with the confidence of a fainting goat, "I'm absolutely fine." "Lie back," she said. I obeyed so fast, the paper runner skied out from under me, an accordion folded like a tragic party streamer. She tilted the table, cold compress on my neck. Happens all the time. I believed her and also did not. When I had rejoined the mortal plane, Dr. Sunshine returned with a cart that held what I can only describe as a variety pack of humbling. EKG leads, a portable ultrasound, gauze, a box with a cheerful label that read "Stool Collection Kit" in the same font that used for children's cereals. "Given your symptoms," he said, "I'd like to get an EKG baseline and a quick abdominal ultrasound to rule out gallbladder issues or anything acute, and we'll send you home with the," he tapped the stool kit like it was a party favor, "for additional testing." EKG first. This involves stickers, many stickers. The nurse placed electrodes on my chest, ribs, ankles, and wrists. "You can breathe normally," she said, then adhered a sticker directly onto a patch of chest hair I've been growing since the Bush administration. "We'll take them off quick." "Define quick," I said. "Like a Band-Aid." Reader, she did not lie. When the time came, my soul left my body and hovered near the ceiling, watching as a small forest was clear-cut in the name of cardiovascular health. Each rip was a syllable. You'll, rip, be, rip, fine, rip. Next, the ultrasound. She squirted gel onto my abdomen, cryogenic gel forged in the heart of a glacier, and pressed the probe, rolling it around like she was searching for buried treasure. On screen, my internal ocean, rendered in grayscale mystery. She told me to breathe in and hold. I did. My stomach chose that exact moment to voice its dissent with a sound like a vintage door opening. "Totally normal," she said, not even chuckling, which is how I knew she was a professional. Then came the conversation I had feared since the nurse wrote "digestive irregularities" on my chart. "Given your discomfort you described and your family history," he paused, "we should do a quick digital rectal exam. It's brief. Look, I am an adult. I floss, I pay taxes, I own a plunger. I know medicine is medicine, not Netflix and chill. But there is no universe where the phrase quick digital rectal exam doesn't make your spine consider a career in origami." He gave me a minute. I stared at the lower GI poster like it contained the secret third option. It did not. I said, "Okay," in the voice of someone agreeing to adopt a hurricane. He said, "Left side, knees up." The gown attempted escape. The paper table reintroduced itself to my thighs. He said kindly, "I'll narrate." I said, less kindly, "Please don't," and then we both laughed, which helped. Glove snap, lubricant, a sensation from the realm of "I would like to unsubscribe." He was quick, professional, and mercifully quiet. "Good tone, no masses, no blood," he said, like a sommelier describing a vintage. "We'll wait on labs and the ultrasound read, but nothing alarming on exam." The relief I felt could have powered the building. He handed me tissues and, with the air of a game show host, presented the final indignity, the stool collection kit. He said, "There are instructions. Read them carefully."
At home, I would discover those instructions include a cardboard hat that lives on your toilet like a jaunty fascinator and a wooden spatula that looks stolen from a cupcake shop. At the moment, I just nodded, tucked the box under my arm like a prize I'd won for surviving, and tried to stand up without broadcasting the gel slick on my abdomen to the entire hallway. We were not done. "Before you go," he said, "we need a blood pressure recheck since you got lightheaded. Back on the cuff, squeeze, number's fine." He smiled. "Two last things. You were supposed to be fasting for the lipid panel, were you?" I remembered, with the clarity of a criminal recalling the evidence, the granola bar I had inhaled in the parking lot because my appointment was at 11 and I am not a camel. "Define fasting," I tried. He laughed. "We'll just mark it non-fasting. It's fine." He wrote a note that probably said, "Patient cannot resist oats." And he added, "Since you mentioned occasional sharp pains lower right, if anything worsens, fever, persistent pain, vomiting, you go to the ER. Do not wait." "Got it," I said, clutching my stool kit and what remained of my pride. Perfect. The nurse will bring your discharge papers. That's when the fire alarm went off. I am not exaggerating. An actual building-wide beep beep, followed by a robotic voice ordering everyone to evacuate calmly. The nurse popped her head in, saw my gown, saw my face, and handed me a knit blanket from who knows where. "We'll use the staff stairwell," she said. So I joined a parade of patients, half-dressed, fully humiliated, down 3 flights of stairs, hugging a blanket around my open-backed toga, clutching a box labeled stool in 48-point font. Outside on the sidewalk, the autumn wind knifed through my ensemble while a group of smokers from the dental office watched us like a matinee. A toddler pointed at my box and asked loudly, "What's that?" I said, "Science." After 10 minutes of wind and reflection, we were allowed back in. I signed my forms with numb fingers, scheduled a follow-up, and tried to exit with dignity, which lasted until my blanket snagged on the door handle and I performed a small, televised pratfall for the receptionist. She kindly pretended it didn't happen. I fled. In my car, I sat with the heat blasting and let the day catch up to me. The gown, the cup mishap, the faint, the stickers, the exam, the alarm, the sidewalk tableau, the box in my lap like a loaf of shame bread. My phone buzzed with the lab app inviting me to create an account to view your results. I declined, on the grounds that I needed 48 hours to remember how to be a person. When I finally got home, I set the box on the bathroom counter like a cursed relic and texted my best friend, "If I die, bury me in a closed casket and tell no one about the cardboard toilet hat I'm about to assemble." Her reply, "Pics or it didn't happen." It was gonna get worse before it got better.
The kit sat on my bathroom counter for 3 full days. Every time I brushed my teeth, I'd glance at the box and feel its judgment. "Collect your sample," it seemed to whisper. "Be an adult. Science awaits." Finally, on day 4, armed with courage and too much coffee, I decided today is the day. Step 1 in the instructions, unfold the cardboard collection hat and place it over the toilet bowl. I pulled it out and I swear it looked like something you'd put in a birthday goodie bag. Pale beige cardboard, flimsy tabs, and a little arrow that said, "This side up." It was less medical equipment and more origami project for masochists. I wrestled it into place. It wobbled like a drunk trampoline. I sat gingerly, praying to the gods of physics. Here's the thing about the human body. The moment you want it to cooperate, it laughs at you. I sat there for a good 20 minutes, scrolling TikTok, bargaining with my intestines. Nothing. Then, out of nowhere, success. Not graceful, not quiet, but success. The instruction said to use the provided wooden spatulas, yes, spatulas, to transfer a sample portion into the little vials. Picture me crouched over a cardboard hat, holding what looks like a popsicle stick, whispering, "Why am I alive?" I managed the transfer without spilling, sealed the vial, and was just about to triumphantly close the kit when the doorbell rang. Delivery. My dog went ballistic. I froze, spatula in hand, cardboard hat still wobbling on the toilet like a crime scene. Whoever was at the door wouldn't leave. The bell rang again, then a knock. "Package for you." I panicked. I yanked up my sweatpants, shoved the spatula into the sink, a decision I regret to this day, and sprinted to the door. The UPS guy handed me a box, smiled, and asked, "New phone case?" I stood there, sweating, reeking faintly of antiseptic and shame, cardboard hat visible in the bathroom mirror behind me. "Yeah, something like that." He gave me a look. The look said, "I don't want to know, and I will never forget this." I slammed the door, ran back, and finished the job. Kit sealed, boxed, taped like Fort Knox. Next step, drop it off at the lab. The lab was inside a strip mall medical plaza sandwiched between a nail salon and a vape shop. The waiting area was crowded, and I there was, clutching a bag with a giant biohazard sticker like I was carrying plutonium. The receptionist took it without blinking. Then she frowned. This isn't labeled." My blood went cold. Apparently, in my panic, I had sealed the sample without writing my name, date of birth, and collection time. So she handed it back, to me, in the middle of the waiting room. "Fill this out, hun." Every head in the room turned. I could feel their eyes on me as I took out the Sharpie and carefully wrote my name on a plastic vial of, well, you know. My hands shook so badly I misspelled my own last name, had to cross it out and rewrite it. I finally shoved the bag back across the counter, and the receptionist said, chipper as ever, "Great! Results in 7 to 10 business days." I fled.
At home, I scrubbed the sink where the spatula had briefly lived, burned the cardboard hat like it was cursed, and took a shower so long my water heater wept. But the ordeal wasn't over. Oh no. Because the real horror wasn't the kit, or the UPS guy, or the Sharpie humiliation. The real horror was the phone call I got a week later.
A week later, I was at work when my phone buzzed with the clinic's number. I ducked into a conference room, figuring it was the usual, all clear, you're fine, eat more fiber spiel. Instead, the nurse on the other end cleared her throat and said, "Hi, this is Carla from Dr. Sunshine's office. We wanted to go over your stool results." Not the phrase you want blasted into your ear while sitting under fluorescent lights in a glass-walled room at the office. She started reading in the most cheerful tone imaginable. "So, your sample tested positive for a number of abnormalities." "Wait, what?" My voice cracked so loudly my coworkers outside probably thought I was giving a motivational speech. "Don't worry, don't panic," she said. "We're going to schedule you for some follow-up diagnostics." I was already sweating through my shirt. "Diagnostics like..." "Well," she said, clicking away on her keyboard, "based on these results, Dr. Sunshine wants a colonoscopy consult." I nearly dropped the phone. A colonoscopy? From my little cardboard hat adventure? My mind reeled. I'm 30, not 70. This wasn't supposed to be happening. I asked, "Can you send me a copy of the report?" "Of course," she said, and emailed it over while I was still on the line. I opened it, scrolling through a minefield of medical jargon, elevated this, abnormal that, further investigation recommended. And then I saw it. The name. Not mine. Same first name, different last name. Entirely different patient. I blinked. Twice. I think this is, not me?" She went silent. Click. Click, click. Then, "Oh my God. You're right. I am so sorry. We had 2 patients with the same first name submit samples that day. Your results are completely normal." I just stood there in stunned silence while she babbled apologies. Meanwhile, the other poor soul, blissfully unaware their terrifying report had just been delivered to a stranger holding a phone in a glass box at an office park. By the time she finished apologizing, my fight-or-flight response had burned out. "Okay," I said faintly. "So, no colonoscopy." "No colonoscopy," she promised. "Everything is fine, completely normal. Again, I am so sorry." I hung up, slid down the wall, and laughed until tears came. A coworker walked in, saw me on the floor, and asked, "You good?" I just waved weakly and said, "Never better." But the universe wasn't done with me, because the real colonoscopy scare was still waiting in the wings.
You'd think that once the clinic corrected the mix-up, that would be the end of it. A funny but harrowing story I'd tuck away and maybe share at a bar years later. But no, the humiliation had legs. Because in the 24 hours between "you need a colonoscopy" and "oops, wrong patient," I had already told people. I'd called my mom, panicked. They found something, I don't know what. I might need a colonoscopy. She immediately switched into full crisis mode, Googling survival rates, calling my aunt, who's a nurse, praying loudly over the phone while I tried to calm her down. Then I texted my group chat. "Guys, I might need a colonoscopy. Don't laugh." Of course, they laughed. Hard. One friend replied with a gif of a garden hose. Another said, "Congrats, you're officially old." By the end of the night, I was the butt, pun intended, of every joke. So when the nurse called me the next day to say, "Oops, wrong results, you're totally fine," I thought, great, problem solved. Except it wasn't, because now I had to walk it all back. Telling my mom was easy. She cried with relief, then pivoted into scolding me for scaring her half to death. Fair. But the group chat? That was hell. Me, false alarm, mix-up at the lab, no colonoscopy. Them, sure, that's what everyone says when they chicken out. Me, no, seriously, totally fine. Them, pics or it didn't happen. Me, you want pics of my intestines? Them, yes. It became my new nickname. Colonoscopy Kid, Hat Boy, Poop Kit. For weeks, every time I walked into a bar, someone would shout, "How's your colon?" And then, the absolute worst part, my mom told my grandmother. So now every phone call with my 80-year-old grandmother began with, "I'm so glad your colon is healthy, honey." Every single call. At that point, I figured things couldn't get worse. But the universe wasn't done testing me, because 3 weeks later, my stomach pain flared up again. Sharp, persistent, worse than before. And guess what Dr. Sunshine suggested? That's right, an actual colonoscopy.
3 weeks after the lab fiasco, karma came calling. The stomach pain that had started this whole circus returned with a vengeance. It wasn't just bloating anymore. It was sharp, stabbing like my intestines were staging a coup. So back I went to Dr. Sunshine. He poked, prodded, hummed thoughtfully, and then delivered the sentence I'd been dreading. "I think it's time we schedule that colonoscopy for real." I just stared at him. "You're kidding." He wasn't. I won't bore you with the scheduling logistics, but let's skip ahead to the worst part, the prep. Anyone who has had the pleasure knows exactly what I mean. For the uninitiated, imagine drinking lemon-flavored rocket fuel whose only purpose is to turn your digestive system into Niagara Falls. At 6 p.m., I chugged the first round of the prep solution. By 6:15, my stomach was making noises like Jurassic Park. By 6:30, I was sprinting to the bathroom like Usain Bolt chasing a gold medal. The instructions had warned me, stay near a restroom. What they should have said was, move into the restroom, bring snacks. That night was a blur of bathroom trips, electrolyte drinks, and me whispering apologies to my toilet like it was a war buddy taking heavy fire. By midnight, I was hollowed out, shivering under a blanket, convinced my soul had left via the plumbing. The morning of the procedure, I shuffled into the clinic, pale, dehydrated, and holding on to my last shred of dignity like it was on layaway. The nurse checked me in, gave me a gown, open in the back, of course, we meet again, old enemy. Then she led me to a curtained-off bay. "Any questions before anesthesia?" she asked. "Yeah, could I just die instead?" She laughed like she hadn't heard that exact joke 1,000 times. Then the anesthesiologist came in. He explained the sedation process while I nodded like a condemned man. "You'll be awake, but relaxed. Most people don't remember much." Great, that's exactly how I want to spend my Thursday morning, semi-conscious while someone spelunks my colon. They wheeled me into the procedure room. Bright lights, beeping machines, a monitor on the wall that would soon broadcast my insides like the world's worst nature documentary. "Deep breaths," the anesthesiologist said. The sedative hit my veins like warm honey. My anxiety softened, edges blurred, and then nothing. When I came to, I was back in the curtained-off bay, groggy, disoriented. A nurse offered me apple juice like I'd just finished kindergarten. Dr. Sunshine appeared with a clipboard. "Good news, everything looks normal. No polyps, no inflammation, just some mild IBS we can manage with diet." I blinked at him. "So, all of this for IBS?" He smiled. "Sometimes it's better to be thorough." I wanted to laugh, or cry, or both. Instead, I sipped my apple juice and thought about the last 6 weeks. The gown fiasco, the pea cup disaster, the stool kit saga, the lab mix-up, my grandma blessing my colon, and now this. All that, and the verdict was essentially, maybe eat less cheese. When I got home, I collapsed into bed and texted my group chat. "Colonoscopy complete, everything's fine, officially the cleanest colon in the tri-state area." They replied with confetti emojis, poop emojis, and one Photoshop of me wearing a cardboard toilet hat like a crown. And honestly, at that point,
I couldn't even be mad. Because if surviving all that humiliation taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes adulthood isn't about being responsible or healthy. Sometimes it's just about living through the worst possible stories so you can tell them later. And dear God, do I have a story now?
I found my partner's second phone. What it revealed has wrecked my entire world.
My boyfriend, Alex, had left his gym bag by the couch. Normally, he was meticulous, borderline obsessive about keeping his stuff zipped, stashed, or out of sight. But that night, he was in the shower, and the bag sat open. His regular iPhone was on the counter charging. When I went to toss a blanket over the bag, we have a cat that likes to climb into everything, I saw it. A phone. Not his. It wasn't even in a case. Just a cheap, black Android burner, screen cracked, charger cord wrapped around it like he'd yanked it from the wall. My stomach dropped. I picked it up. It buzzed. A notification lit the screen. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow." Heart. Not from me. My hands went cold. My first thought wasn't even, he's cheating. It was, maybe it's an old work phone. But then it buzzed again. A Snapchat notification. And another. "Did you tell her you're staying late again?" Winky face. I swear I felt the air leave my lungs. I set it down like it was radioactive, heart hammering so loud I was sure he'd hear it over the shower. A million scenarios hit me at once. Maybe it was his friend's phone. Maybe I was misreading. Maybe this wasn't what it looked like. But I knew. I knew because I'd felt the distance creeping in for months. Late nights at work, sudden emergencies that pulled him away from dinners, a weird reluctance to let me borrow his main phone even for quick calls. The second phone explained everything. When he came out of the shower, towel around his waist, he smiled at me like nothing had happened. And I smiled back, heart pounding, while the secret sat 6 feet away in his bag. I didn't confront him that night, or the next. Instead, I waited. I planned. I wanted to know the truth, all of it, before I said a word. And that was the beginning of the darkest 2 weeks of my life.
The next morning, when Alex left for work, I told him I was working from home. As soon as the door shut, I went straight for the gym bag. The burner phone was still there. I turned it on, no password, no fingerprint lock, almost like he didn't care if someone found it, or maybe he thought he was too careful for that. The messages were the first blow. Text threads with at least 3 different women, all recent. Sweet talk, plans to meet, photos exchanged. Some messages went back months. The names weren't even saved as contacts, just numbers. I copied them down. Snapchat was worse. The app was full of disappearing messages, but the previews were damning enough. Suggestive selfies, strings of hearts, late-night check-ins like, "Did you make it home safe, babe?" Then, the calendar hit me like a punch. He'd been using the phone to log appointments, not meetings, but coded notes. 7 p.m., N, lunch, M, dates and initials, all in the exact windows of time he told me he was working late or running errands. My hands shook as I scrolled. It wasn't just cheating, it was an entire system, a second life mapped out in cheap plastic and cracked glass. I dug deeper. In the photos folder, I found pictures of him with another woman. Not selfies, not group shots, but cozy, intimate pictures. Her head on his shoulder in a restaurant, him kissing her cheek in a car. They weren't casual hookups. At least one of these women thought she was his girlfriend. My chest tightened until it hurt. Because in that moment, I realized I wasn't just betrayed, I was a prop in his double life. The part that broke me most, in his notes app, there was a draft of a message that looked like he'd been rehearsing. It said, "You mean everything to me. I hate living a lie. I want to tell her soon." I sat there, shaking with the phone buzzing in my hand, while his real life, his secret life, unfolded in front of me. And still, I didn't confront him. Not yet. Because I needed more than evidence. I needed to decide whether I wanted to burn everything down or walk away quietly. So, I made a plan. I bought my own burner phone. I used one of the numbers I'd copied to text one of the women pretending to be him just enough to set up a meeting. And when she showed up, and I saw her face, real, human, hurt, I knew there was no going back.
Meeting her in person was the moment everything crystallized. Her name was Natalie. She was younger than me by maybe 5 years, with this open, hopeful look in her eyes that made my stomach turn. Because she didn't know. She thought she was the only one. I introduced myself, not as Alex, not with a fake excuse, just, I'm his girlfriend. Her face drained of color. We sat down at a coffee shop, and over the next hour, we pieced together timelines. She'd been seeing him for 8 months. 8! Almost as long as I'd been living with him. He told her he was single, that he had roommates. He'd stayed at her apartment overnight on business trips. He even had clothes there. She started crying halfway through, and I didn't even have the heart to be angry at her. She was collateral damage, same as me. After she left, I sat in my car shaking for 30 minutes. Then I drove home, waited for him, and when he walked through the door smiling, I put both phones on the table. Want to explain? I asked. The look on his face, it was like the mask slipped in real time. Shock, then panic, then the rapid-fire excuses. He tried everything. It wasn't what it looked like. He was going to end it. He loved me, not them. He was lost. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just told him I'd already talked to Natalie, and I knew there were others. The color drained out of him then. He realized the game was over. I had already packed a bag. While he sputtered, I picked it up, called my brother to meet me, and walked out. The fallout was brutal. Natalie texted me later to say she'd ended it too. Another woman, whose number I had found, eventually reached out after I sent her screenshots. Same story, same lies. He had been juggling all of us like some grotesque circus act, while smiling in my face and calling me his future. In the weeks that followed, he sent long emails, apologizing, begging, bargaining. I didn't reply. What could I say? That he'd nuked every ounce of trust? That I didn't even know who I'd been living with anymore? Now looking back, the scariest part isn't that he cheated. It's how seamlessly he lived that double life, how easily he lied, how comfortable he was switching between us like apps on his phone. Finding the second phone destroyed me in ways I didn't expect, but it also saved me. Because if I hadn't looked, if I hadn't followed the thread, I'd still be living in his illusion, thinking I was loved while he was dividing his life into folders. The truth burned everything down, but at least now I know I'm free.